Good morning, guys. We're about ready to start. I'll just give a couple of extra minutes to see if we've got any strugglers coming, and then we'll start the session.
Morning, everyone.
So we'll just wait another minute, get a couple more guys to see if we some strugglers to come in, and then we'll start our session.
I appear to be getting younger every day. Alison, you've got my name under your face.
I got it. Thanks, Anne. That should sort it out.
I think it's enough time, Alison. We'll kick it off.
Cool, thanks. Welcome everyone to today's seminar, and thank you for joining us. My name is Alison Renwick. Today is the first of a series of best practice webinars that Softtech will be running, designed to help you grow your business. We would like these webinars to be interactive, so we encourage you to type any questions that you have in the questions window to the right-hand side, and we'll answer those that we can at the end of the presentation. Stewart McMillan to my left is joining today. He's going to be our speaker and will be helping you in understanding true labour costs. Stewart is the Fabrication Business Manager here at Softtech. He has over 20 years experience in the windows and door industry. He's designed, tested windows, doors and hardware. He's consulted on factory layouts and manufacturing best processes, and he's visited over hundreds of manufacturing sites, so he brings with him a wealth of knowledge. Thanks again, and we hope you enjoy our webinar, and I'll hand you over to Stewart to continue.
Thanks, Alison. So yeah, I've been around a few factories over my time. I've helped a number of businesses with their product, manufacturing their product and designing their factory for best factory processes or factory flows and things like that. So there's a few topics I want to try and cover today. These are just my experiences and opinions in this matter. So what I'll do is actually turn off the monitor, the camera, and I'll go through it. So quoting your labour. Now, software is a wonderful thing. At the end of the day, software is only as good as the information you put in it, and software will only put out what you want it to do. Even artificial intelligence is really just a lot of if formulas to make software look like it's making intelligent decisions. So how was quoting done? It's so the reason I bring up the first point is because when you look at a quoting package, it'll only tell you the time it takes to do a specific operation or a group of operations. In other words, it will only output exactly what you input into it. It's possible to make complex formulas in there to work out, so if it's size, mass, or area, which can affect the labour. So if your glass is a certain size, it will add like a formula on to see how long it will take. But these times are never actually the same as what is on your factory floor, what happens in your factory floor. Your database is unique to you. So it's dependent on who built the database in the quoting package, what they built it for. So if it was for a manufacturing type or for a sales type of database, the information there is going to be unique for each manufacturer or for each product. So it's very important to understand what labour you have in your database and how that labour associates to your factory, what it means to you in your factory. So that's what I'm talking about in quoting labour. So I'll move on to your factory floor. So your factory is unique to you. It's unique to the way you produce your windows. It's unique to the products that you do, and it's unique to the skill of your staff you have available and the machineries you've got at hand as well. This is why it's very important to analyse your production process and actually tell the quoting package that what time it takes you to complete tasks or jobs. Now, when we talk about telling the quoting package what to put in, you've got to look at the big picture. As mentioned before, the software will only put out what you tell it to. So if you say it takes 5 seconds to make a cut, the software will just calculate 5 seconds per cut and output a total time. But is that the whole picture? Do you hold stock? Does the sawman pick from the saw himself? Or do you have another process that brings material to the sawman? Does your sawman cut from a sheet of paper and mark off as he's going through the process? Then does he mark the cut piece at the end? All these add time to a process. So when you're looking at a cut or the cutting process, you should be analysing the whole job, what actually happens in that stage from start to finish, and then consider adding those times into your database. So factory efficiencies. What factors affect this are how good your equipment is, what access to tools or machine does your labour have. Again, all these points make a difference to the time that is set in your operation, and they're unique to your factory. If a worker has to move from their area, they're not performing their task, and this will not be factored into the labour in the quoting software. So this is what we would say non-quota or non-billable labour, and I'll go into a little bit in the time methods. So that's what I've got on your factory. So I'll now move on to timekeeping methods. Why is timekeeping important? Well, as the old age saying goes, if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. And in production, this is important on several levels. Knowing how long a process takes allows you to analyse it so you can improve the process. Knowing how much you spent on a task, how much time you spent on a task, gives you a true cost of labour. These 2 points are important to the health of your business. The second point is important to your bottom line, as you know your true cost of glass, aluminium, hardware, and so on at the point of estimating or quoting the job. But your labour is really just an estimate. At the time of the quote, you won't know about workers having days off, equipment breaking down, or how good the quoting times are in your package. So when you quote the job, you're going to know exactly how much the metal and the hardware and all those things are, but you're not going to know exactly. So you're just really estimating on what's going to happen in the future. So a few ways to track this is one's the stopwatch. So this is a great method. The old stopwatch in your hand with a clipboard and timing the worker. This works great while you're there in front of the worker because he's going to be focused on the task at hand. But he may work faster or he may work slower. But it's only a true snapshot of that point in time. The next time he does this task without someone timing him, he might go slower, he might go faster, he might get distracted, he might get pulled off to do another job or help someone do a different task, which is what we're talking about in non-billable labour. Now, another method would be the timesheet. So a worker fills out a form that collates the time they spent on a task or job. This is pretty effective when it's done right and managed correctly, and could be a great indication of all the time spent on a particular job. And in this method, you could also track non-billable time. But if it's not managed correctly, the workers can get together and sort of fudge all the numbers to suit what they think has happened on the floor. And also, you're introducing another process, so another non-billable labour. So this is not value adding to your product. Now, some software is probably a great solution for this. There's programs that we can set up to track time on your factory floor and can report on time spent on quoted or non-quoted, non-billable times. These are great as the process is automated and not very time consuming. They're harder to fudge than a timesheet, and they can capture non-billable time a lot easier. So non-billable, non-quoted time are tasks that are not set in the quoting package. These things could be helping unload a truck. So the guy's got to get on a forklift or move things around, or he's got to help someone lift something. Cleaning at the end of the shift, meetings. All these, you're paying the workers to do this, but you may not be associating any of your time in the quoting package to cover this. So non-quoted labour or non-billable labour. Now, so this labour is pretty much your inefficiencies of your business. If a worker was able to stay at their work area and do nothing than the task at hand, that would be 100% efficient. So this is different to worker performance. This is, efficiencies within your factory. So a good idea behind timekeeping or capturing time is to try and record the whole task. So going back to the sawman where we talk about, does he pick the metal himself? Does he mark off a sheet? Does he add markings to the material so the next guy knows what's going on? All this whole process is what should be captured as a time to be added into your quoting package. So now what we'll get on to is a bit of best practice about your factory and processes. Now, there's no one set rule for this. And again, your production is very unique to you, the product that you're making, the factory and space and equipment you have available to you. But that said, there's a few important practices that will improve production. And I found that normally a combination of a few of these practices actually get the best results. The first thing would be a good production manager. So a good production manager is a guy that runs around the floor and that says, hundreds of 3 to 6 word sentences, like, where's the metal? What are you doing next? Have you got this? Where's that? Is the glass on order? So this guy makes sure that your workers are focused at the task at hand. So they're not running around trying to find bits and pieces. This guy is actually making sure that everyone's doing what they should be doing just by asking these little questions. What you get in is what you get out is what you put in. So having correct data at the start is extremely important. There's no point of sending incomplete information to the floor. This adds confusion and non-billable, non-quoted labour to your factory floor. So this adds inefficiencies before you've even started the job. Workers will have to stop what they're doing and ask questions. So normally this would be to another worker, and now means that two guys are not working on a particular job trying to find an answer because the information hasn't been brought down correctly. And I've seen in factories up to 4 people looking at a production drawing during the manufacturing process. So I've got the estimator, the production manager, and 2 of the workers standing around trying to work out how they're going to manufacture a particular product during the process time. So this is now they've been quoted and all this extra labour is now being added to the job. A good way to get around this would be a detailer. So this is someone in your business that's not a salesman or not an estimator, who's more manufactured or production minded. And these guys run a second set of eyes over the job, over the quote, and make sure what needs to be manufactured is available, can be produced by the what's in the quote, and provides information so when it does get to the floor, they've got the right locks, all the right options are selected, everything's available. So once you start, you pretty much finish the whole process without having to stop. Another thing would be looking at lean. So I'm far from an expert when it comes to lean, but I've done a bit of studies and some research in it. Lean is about minimising waste in the manufacturing process. This is waste of materials, waste of time, and it's also about increasing value to your customer with fewer resources. So it's not necessarily about being faster in production. Being faster in production is like a byproduct of lean. But sort of don't expect that if you get a consultant to come in or you say you're going to go do lean and you do 1 or 2 things and then all of a sudden you're lean. Lean's much bigger than that. Lean's more about it's a whole philosophy, a whole cultural change in your business to actually get this concept to really work. But with most of these things, it's on itself, it's not an answer to a great productive floor. You'll still need a great production manager to make sure that this is running all the time. You're still going to need good data coming through. And the other thing that you need is processes. So processes are important in production. So pretty much a series of steps or actions to achieve a result. So even better than just sort of thinking about or knowing a particular process is actually having them written down, having these processes documented. So the way people do particular tasks or the steps that they should do it in are actually great to have documented for new staff. So it helps train new staff. It allows staff to self-manage, so they can refer back to a document to tell them what they should be doing in this process. And in fact, when you start documenting your processes, it's the start of a quality management system. So this means that you can reproduce the same quality over and over again because you have these set processes already in place. So a factory layout. Now, factory layout is important to minimise movement around the floor. A good design manages space and flow, allowing like processes to be close to each other. One bad example I've seen is the metal store is always the furthest away from the loading docks or where material is unloaded or trucks are loaded for finished product. So the metal's got to go from one end of the factory to the other to be loaded into a rack or cut, and then it works its way back through as a finished product out the door. So there's a few ways of manufacturing, which would be a line and a cellular type. So a line is when you break down each process to a very singular item. So if it's one particular task per station, and a cellular is more of grouping these tasks together with workers. Kind of with windows and doors, you notice that most of the time cutting, machining and prep are generally a very line associated type of task, but then they'll move into a cellular. So a worker could make the frame, make a sash, assemble it together, and then move it on to another process. But if you're looking at a full assembly line, there's a few things you've got to consider, which is obviously these things take a fair bit of lineal space. And the process is a lot about manufacturing to stock. So each stage will be manufactured to stock. So a sash will be made, put into stock. The next station will take that stock, make something else, and move it into stock. So there's a lot of considerations that have to be made, as in the timing when production lines, where cellular are a little bit more flexible in that sort of method. So let's move on to a possible solution. So Softtech has a scheduling module, which is a great tool for your factory floor and labour tracking. With the scheduling module, the software takes the labour time from the Softtech quoting package, and it allows you to group multiple labour times together, and helps with a cell or production line to schedule the work as it's going through the factory floor. Now, the way it works, we've got an interface here, and what we have is our workers on the left. We've got our work types. So this is customized to your factory. These are the processes or cells or assembly line tasks that you have in your factory. Here we've got the list of quotes or the jobs that are in production. And now we've got our production board. So we've got hours available to hours committed. And the colours are determined on the work type that we've set for your factory. So when it comes to actually claiming and understanding the true time that you spend on particular jobs, we've got this the scheduling app. So this tablet goes to your factory floor, and workers can log in by selecting on the avatar, and it brings up this sort of page where they're given set tasks that they can do in a work area. They can then select a quote or job that they're working on. Here would be all the items that are in the job, and we can then move them into to say this is the item that I have completed. You can then say a completion rate, and then you can just hit OK. And what that does is now capture the time from your last activity. So if a worker had logged in at 8 o'clock and till 9:30 he was cutting a particular job, it will take from 8 o'clock to 9:30, an hour and a half, and say that's the time it took to do that job. Here's a view of the homepage with actually some information in it. So you see at the top we've highlighted the work area that the worker is actually working in, the quote that he's working on, and the item that he'd completed. So another feature we've got is the pause function. So when we go into the worker's homepage, we can have a pause. So what the guy does is select on this button, and it no longer tracks the time that you're spending on the labour task prior. It pretty much pauses at that point in time, and then starts capturing time for a particular task that you've sort of set up. So these are tasks that are not in V6's quoting package. So we could have a pause type like loading a truck, receiving goods, other works or reworks. We could have meetings. So this will now capture the time that your workers are spending on non-billable actions. So we can select it and hit OK, and now we're capturing the time. What we've got here is sort of a view of the software dependent on what a particular worker is doing. So we've got a red avatar, means the worker is on pause. So his time is no longer being associated to a job or a quote. It's now being associated to a non-billable task. We've got blue, so this could be the worker's on a break, so he's on a non-working task. And then green, the worker's actively, so he's actively working, actually actively being timed to a V6 labour time. So that's it for me on the presentation side, but I'm open to questions if everyone's got anything. Let's have a look here. So no one wants to ask a question? All right, so I've got a question on overtime. Look, overtime is important in the business. There's a kind of a degree of where you want or how much overtime you want to actually have in place. So a kind of good rule of thumb is 4 to 5 hours a week per worker. This means that your factory has a fair amount of work in place. The workers have an opportunity to earn a little bit more money, but it's not affecting hugely on your bottom line. Having too much overtime means that now what you originally estimated in the quote at your standard labour rate is now time and a half or double time, depending on what you pay your workers. So your labour is actually then going to blow out because of overtime, and you can overwork your workers plus lower morale. So having a bit of overtime is actually pretty good for businesses. If there is no overtime, workers tend to what they'll tend to do is if they've got 2 hours to do a task, they'll take 2 hours to do a task. So they'll stretch out the work as they see fit. So how are we going for time? I've got a question about some of the factories I've seen. What's one of the worst? So I've seen a guy that was working out of pretty much a chicken shed. He had this little building. It was kind of split into 2 rooms. He had the saw in one side, and he had the run-in table on the other. So the worker would have to move from one shed, walk out the door into another to load metal onto the saw, move back to the other shed so he could start actually making cuts. So that's probably one of the worst I've seen. But by saying that, this guy actually produced huge amounts of product, and has since then actually built a proper purpose-built factory for manufacturing windows and doors, and it's pretty impressive now. But yeah, the first days when we went out to see this guy, it was less than impressive, I would say. I've got a question about automating or automation in factories. Automation is great. It actually, it is pretty good, but there's a few factors that cause some issues with it. A lot of the stuff I've seen automated to date has been about trying to automate an existing product. So the product has been designed for aesthetic reasons, performance for window and water, or thermal performance. So it actually hasn't been designed to be automated. So to automate it is actually quite difficult. So it can be done, but to actually do it, the concept has to be started back before the design of the product. So you have to think about how the product will be manufactured at the design stage, rather than just thinking about aesthetics and performance. That's the best way to automate a product. The other part of it is to get a good ROI, return on interest investment, is the product volume has to be high. And in most cases, the market sector that are run in high volume windows, there's actually a lot less margin in the window. So the cost to automate sort of outweighs what it's your return on investment. It'll take too long to actually get any money back for when you're automating a line like that. So yeah, there's a few things actually got to come into play when it looks to automate. All right, so I think time-wise, we're pretty much bang on 8:30. So if you guys have got any other questions or want to have a chat, my details on the screen. So I think we'll leave it there, and thanks everyone for your time.